Then she was back around to her desk again. She stopped, sighed, and ground the heels of her hands into her eyes. The Magi Omnisaur, who monitored the custodian's life runes, assured her not one had gone dark. She had never known one do so, in fact, for the custodians did not die easily. Still, these were unusual times. "That's enough of that," she muttered. The emissaries were a subtle weapon. As such, Sangar was used to being a ghost until her masters called her. But although Abel Sangar gloried in her duties, she was also acutely aware of their gravity, and she hated waiting. It was insane that she feel maternal towards the shield captain, but sometimes she did. The custodians were beings beyond compare, but they could sometimes seem so naive. Clicking her tongue at herself, Abel Sangar sat down at her desk. If sleep wouldn't come, she might as well work. "Nobody ever talks about how much damned scroll work there is in captaining a void ship," she muttered, activating the cogitator's holo reader. There was movement on her desk atop a stack of books. Small eyes lit up blue. "Record and archive?" queried her cyber-slave. She glared at it. It was a horrible thing, a small homunculus of hideous aspect, so old it looked like it was falling apart. It was little more than a brass skeleton and power cell wrapped about with leather. Maybe once the skin had given it the seeming of a living creature, but it was now so dry and cracked its metal innards poked through the stitching. She wondered what it was supposed to represent. It could have been a preserved animal or dwarfish xenos species, she thought, but it didn't match anything in any file or book she'd ever seen. It wore a little plaque on a chain about its neck, like the cuirassier's plate favoured by certain military orders. Upon this was a legend whose engraving was almost worn away. "Lest we forget what awaits beyond the veil." "No," she said. The thing cringed at her tone. It had belonged to the last captain, and he'd said he had also inherited it. It was feasibly as old as the Radiance itself, and so she hadn't mustered the heart to dispose of it. Sailor's superstition, she chided herself, but she still heeded it. The Radiance was currently in high geostationary anchor over the Ascension Stair spaceport, shrouded by the obfuscation field from the enemy, who were in turn hiding from the port guns. She pulled in fresh data feeds and consigned stale information to the archives. Then she consulted the repair reports from Magos Zarch. All damage suffered by the Radiance during their translation into real space had been made as good as it could, barring a few tertiary power couplings in Sector Quartus. Zarch assured her these would be re-sanctified within the hour. Officers Osmore and Van Schellen had managed to contact 3 surviving Imperial warships. One, an Armageddon-class cruiser called the Resolute, was concealed in Gothalamor's lesser asteroid belt. The other 2, a system monitor called the Nil Desperandor and the sorely wounded Grand Cruiser Paladin, were lurking at the system's edge. Sangar had spoken with their captains at length. The picture she assembled of the enemy's void strength was daunting, but not, she thought, wholly disastrous. She ran her finger down an annotated list floating before her. "Record and archive," she said clearly. The small construct straightened. Mechanisms exposed by the drying of its skin ran swiftly, like it was eager to be useful. She sometimes felt a little sorry for it. "Notation. Enemy numbers beyond planetary orbit, something between 5 and 10 heretic escorts," she said. "Scattered on outsystem patrols and hunting sweeps. Consider possibility of catching them in ambush. Annotation. In a one-on-one fight, Radiance would make short work of any frigate. Tactical posit, perhaps one or more of them could be wounded and left to bleat their distress calls into the void to pull heretic warships out of position. Caution. Danger of miscalculation. Caution. Other Imperial vessels present heavily damaged. Caution. Major enemy fleet presence around Gothalamor. Response times unknown." She paused. "I wonder if the other ships are up to such subtle and precise maneuvers," she told herself. A longer pause followed as she read on. "Recorded and archived," said the homunculus, prompted by her silence. "What?" she said, distractedly. "Playback last 20 seconds. The thing gaped. Whoever had made it had thought it amusing to set vermin's teeth in its plaster gums. Her voice came out of its mouth, always higher than she thought it was. "Delete last line," she said. "Deleting," it said. She took a sip of tepid water. She wanted something stronger, but needed her head clear. If she regretted one thing about serving the Emperor's guardians, it was that they made the smallest bad habit feel like the worst sin. "Record and archive to shipmistress's log," she said. "Further appendage to enemy strength estimate. Main enemy fleet strength, 5 Voidcraft of Cruiser Void Displacement class, 3 originally of Adeptus Astartes design, the remainder Legion vintage." Truly ancient, she thought. Appendage: further strength at anchor, non-Gathalamor orbit. Total 4 frigates, 1 over Randa and Cryosius's rest apiece, 2 over the oceanic agri-world of Jor. She leaned back. "Pause recording," she said. "Compliance," squeaked the hideous thing. It shifted, waiting tensely to be useful again. "There's one more." She paged through a number of other documents floating before her. "Aha! And then there is you filthy abomination," she said, peering at a grainy spectral data rubbing. "Mistress," said the thing. She could have sworn it sounded hurt. "Hush, not you, this." She put her finger through the hollow page and found herself explaining it to the homunculus. "Something in its build suggests an Adeptus Mechanicus explorator ship." The thing crept forward. "Do you see these lines? Looks like a riser pattern M38, doesn't it? But Zarch says no. I think he's wrong. Whatever that thing hanging over Gathalamor is, it is no longer clean. These extrusions here," she pointed them out. "They're biomechanical in nature. Psi auguries suggest empiric activity throughout the ship's structure. It's riddled with corruption. Now, if you forced me at gunpoint, I might say that the ship doesn't appear to be much of a combat craft, though I'd qualify that assessment was based upon gut instinct. What the vessel is, however, is an effective informational warfare weapon. We've detected auger energy signatures and empiric sweeps stretching out from it like solar flares. Terrific range. Mr. Osmore describes the craft appearing on his instruments as a darkly burning star. Mistress of Astropath's Ashmael mutters about the ship's foul animus and how it churns the warp." "Interesting, no? But it hasn't seen us. Not yet." "Record and archive last?" asked the homunculus. "Record and archive last," Sangha said. "So, we have to consider, what if that thing somehow picked up on Akalor's teleport signature? What if the heretics know where he made planetfall? What if they're even now besieged or, throne forgive me, captured?" She paused. "I could contact him to find out. What would that help? It would give away our position, that's what. Stupid idea." She clicked her tongue again, shook her head, and opened a fresh report from the ship's navigator. She frowned, seeing that he, like Ashmael, spoke of strange whispers in the warp originating from Gathalamor. "That can't be good," she said. "Record and archive," rasped the cyber slave. "Record memorandum to self. Interrogate both witches about the whisperings." She felt all the more urgency after reading the rest of the navigator's report. "Substantial bow waves upon the warp tides, accelerated empiric currents, omens of substantial fleet presences approaching." "The battle groups are coming." She looked the data over again. "They're going to be here too soon." "Record and archive." "Throne blast it," she said, reaching for the bottle in her desk drawer. "I'm going to have a drink. I need a drink." "Record and archive." "Could you maybe learn how to say something else?" she said, uncorking the bottle and pouring herself a stiff measure. "Record and archive," it said decisively. "Good health," she said. She took her swallow and sighed, letting her eyes close as the fiery liquid warmed her belly. Her vox trilled. She reached up for her talk and pressed the receive jewel. "Yes?" "Forgive the intrusion, my lady," said the voice at the other end, one of Osmore's men, "but I have a coded message from Lord Akalor." She felt a dizzying wave of relief. "I'm on my way," she said, and downed the last of her drink and hurried out. The homunculus shuffled about on its book, peered around, then hunched low. "Session ended," it said, and the light in its eyes went out. Chapter 22. The Dark Cardinal. Kargathar empowered. Glory of the Gods. Kargathar knew the place of mists that Ismadela saw. He knew a million others. None of them were real. They were landscapes of thought and emotion, and nothing was less permanent than they, so apt to dissolution in the warp as soon as they manifested. And yet they had truth. Truth as much as any stone or breath or star. Reality was subjective, and so experience was all, Kargathar had learned long ago. Around the self could be found the true essence of reality. His soul wandered close to the veil. Days or ages he had been gone, it did not matter. Time was an illusion. Being was all. Being transcended time. He saw himself within his chamber, and he saw himself in myriad landscapes. They were all the same, all false, all true. The hallowed sacristy had been amongst the most holy places in the macro-cathedrum, for Cardinal Asclepius had offered prayers there before leading his first sermon in the great nave. Lies, like all else about the cathedrum, but lies had power, tainting the place from the start. Kargathar had erected altars in the four corners of the sacristy, one sanctified to each of the gods. There was an altar of brass surrounded by skulls, an altar of gold wreathed in incense, an altar of rusted iron garlanded with diseased entrails, an altar of crystal in whose depths formless shapes danced. All four had been slicked with blood during the days of his meditation. Sacrifice after sacrifice met their end beneath the daggers of Yang and her coven. After each death, the still-bloodied knife was used to cut another holy rune into the dark apostle's flesh. His skin sang with hot, tight pain. His flesh was crimson, his blood mingling with that of the hundreds who had perished around him. "In pain is power," he whispered, as another victim gurgled his last, and the wet knife was pushed into Kargathar's skin again. Elsewhere, he wandered a while on plains of shimmering silk, where dancers leapt for tortured eternities, crossing rivers of boiling dreams that melted with soft weeping into nothing. "My lord," he called, "are you there? I come to you with news." Something moaned in ecstasy, something else in pain. His environs shifted to a pleasant forest, where trees with mossy faces slept. "My lord, my cardinal, I have come." In the greater falsehood of reality, the knife pricked him again. There was a rushing sensation, and a touch of a soul upon his. "Kargathar, dark apostle, come to me. I hear you, dark cardinal, lord of mine." Space and time fell to nothing, and from their wreck stepped a figure both proud and terrible. Armoured in black terminator plate, his ancient, withered face surrounded by sculptures of leering demons, Cor Phaeron was the essence of majesty, the master of the faith, swollen by the power of the pantheon. Kargathar knelt before him, his head bowed, blood falling from his ritual wounds into the hungry void. From their drops, a dark fane built itself around the two priests, glossy black masonry and iron arching up to meet, with tall windows framing stars of some other realm. Soft hymns soothed the air. Cor Phaeron placed his hand upon Kargathar's head, and it felt as real as anything could. "Dark Apostle Kargathar, in the name of the Great Four, I bless thee, faithful servant of Legion, Primarch, and gods. Rise, rise, my son, and be welcome." Cor Phaeron's armor growled with animal voices as he lifted his hand. "Thank you, my lord," Kargathar said. He got to his feet. "The ring is found," Phaeron said. "Lord Tenebrus's weapon is almost ready. You have done well. Thank you, my lord. My praise is genuine, my son, but be wary. Tenebrus is cunning and treacherous. The corpse god's false son runs to spread his rage across the stars. This I have seen. Many ships come to Gathalamor, more than anticipated. Abaddon has stirred the hornet's nest. In the Hydrophor sector, the Sons of Blood suffered a great defeat. The final war has come." "The Primarch attacked as two spears so distantly spaced?" asked Kargathar. He had expected a large assault, but not this. "I have seen nothing to warn me of this." Cor Phaeron laughed. "The anathema shrouds the warp. Gilliman attacks on many fronts, not two, and each spear shall be further divided. His armies are beyond compare. Not since we went to war for the corpse god ourselves have so many warriors traveled the stars. Gilliman seeks to pin every serpent head at once. He will fail, for Lord Abaddon's armies are as prepared as his. I have met him in battle. He is wanting. He is nothing compared to the War Master's power. What of our goals? Asked Kargatha. What of our war of faith? The Legion stands ready to move on Taladus. We shall answer the calls of the faithful there and take it. When the false Primarch moves through Gathalamor, we shall strike and drive for Terra. They think themselves on the brink of victory, halting the slaughter crusade, but many blades are aimed at Terra's heart. We shall cut them and bleed mankind of souls until only the faithful remain. If you say you await Gilliman's further advance, you do not think we shall be successful here, said Kargatha. We will not hold this nexus. Fate is in flux. You may yet. The gods will decide. But know that the weapon must survive, beyond all other consideration. Corferon looked down on Kargatha, his lined face glowing with power. There is something you would ask. Yes, Kargatha said. I feel something. There is a disturbance here. I sense the hand of our enemy, the Adeptus Custodes. A flash of gold. The death of one of the faithful. Yes, I sense it too, said Corferon. He closed his eyes. The Corpse Lord's guardians have set foot upon Gathalamor. This I did not see before. Corferon frowned. Unfortunate. This will make your task all the more difficult. If they are there, the Adeptus Custodes must have warning of our intentions. How? We are not yet the sole masters of the warp, said Corferon. Gilliman has his own seers. Stop the custodians. The weapon must survive. My lord, Kargatha said, and bowed. I pray to the dark gods to make me strong. If I must face the guardians of the Corpse Lord, I must be blessed. You would know how your prayers will be answered, Corferon smiled. You sacrificed well. The souls you offer are well received, and the gods have judged you worthy. Kargatha let out a grateful sigh. At last. Their boons may kill you. If that is my fate, so be it, for the glory of the gods. As the faithful must accept all burdens placed upon them, for pursuance of the one truth, said Corferon. When shall I receive their blessing? Their power is already in you. You are favored. When the time comes for you to use it, you will know. The building collapsed into a howling spiral of shadow, with the two word-bearers at its center. Dark faces were dragged out into streamers of teeth and fear, the souls of Yang's victims. The enemy comes. The warp is in turmoil. The process of meeting like this becomes more arduous, said Corferon. You and I shall not speak again, Kargatha. He faded from sight. His master gone, Kargatha felt the tug of the materium work upon his soul. Cold stone rose around him. Spirit nestled into flesh, and Kargatha took a breath. After days in trance, his eyes slid open, and he looked upon mundane surroundings again. He smiled through bleeding lips. The promise of power burned through his body. He felt invincible, poised to work a great destruction. The gods have their due, Kargatha murmured. And so I have mine. He unfolded his limbs and rose to his full height. He clenched his fist. Blood squeezed from it, and dark flame flickered at the edge of his sight. "My lord, you wake," said Tharador Yang, starting up from her seat near the sacristy's door. She watched him nervously, fearful that what dwelled in his flesh was not he, but some other soul of more diabolical intent. "It is I, Yang. Cease cowering. he said, and his voice now was a layered growl. He stepped over the ritual circles carved into the floor. His feet adhered to sticky blood. Flies buzzed up from the ground. He spread his arms, and dark light glowed from his palms. "I return to you, blessed Yang. Show your respect." She dropped immediately to her knees and bowed her head. Her silver chains jangled. "Is it time?" asked Yang.
"It is,"
rumbled Kargathar. He could hear Yang's heartbeat, hear the rush of blood in her veins, smell her fear, and he smiled.
"I heard it in the warp from my tutelary's own mouth. The enemy is coming."
"We have had no word," said Yang.
"The powers and I play a game you do not comprehend."
"Yes, my lord. I apologize for my ignorance."
"The gods care not for apologies or for regrets. They favor only will and action. Have my slaves attend me. I require my armor, my relics, my weapons, and my mantle."
"At once," said Yang, bowing again before hastening from the chamber. Slaves crept in, bearing Kargathar's armor plates. His weapons arrived, guarded by his chosen warriors. It was an hour before the arming and prayers were complete, and Kargathar stepped from the sacristy fully clad for war. Over his armor was draped the cloak of nightmares, on whose chain baleful runes glowed.
"Come, Yang," he said. "We go to see Lord Tenebrous."
Chapter 23. The Weapon. A Gathering of Darkness. All that power. The cannon was made all of bone, and the ivory glory of it was very fine to behold. As Yang paced behind Kargathar, she breathed, "Beautiful," and again, "Beautiful, master." It was beautiful, even though it was not quite finished, and scaffolding encased the device halfway up its 300-foot length. The iron warriors were there in numbers, and the adepts of the true mechanicum worked busily around the gun, molecular torches fizzing green sparks as they welded bone to bone. Tenebrous's weapon was mounted on a turntable of dark steel that filled the chapel. Toothed edges allowed the cannon to be rotated, and long equilibrators gave it a range of traverse so it covered the sky almost down to the horizon. Kargathar went to a set of fresh, semicircular steps hewn from granite tombstones that gave access to the platform. The top step was perfectly level with the steel, and when he stepped from the stone to the metal, the turntable was solid as rock. The base seemed to have been cast in one piece, though it was over 400 feet across, and Kargathar could not see how it had been brought under the dome. The base was decorated with images of leering demons, the horns, tongues, and sharp cheekbones of which tessellated perfectly.
"See, Tharador Yang, the art of the sons of Perturabo. They have more talents than only fighting."
But Yang did not look. She had eyes only for the great cannon. Interlinked rib cages made up the breech, then a barrel, first of long bones, then of stacked pelvises, and the last 50 feet of it made only of skulls, their eyes all pointed forward, and their jaws opened up in screams. Each component was part melted into the next, to make one osseous whole. "Beautiful," she said again.
"You should be entranced," said Kargathar.
He rested a hand on her shoulder.
"You lived all your life among these worthless relics. While the worms of the corpse emperor lived in the light, you suffered in poverty. You know these bones of old. They were family to you, more than the dogs of terror ever were. Now see them elevated to a just purpose. You found the key, Tharador Yang. You helped choose the bones. You are blessed."
To see someone give themselves so totally to the gods gladdened Kargathar's black hearts, so he did not kill Yang when she had the temerity to reach up and clasp one of his armored fingers. "Thank you, my master, for the chance you have given me to prove my faith." They walked around the weapon. The breech was solid, with no shell assembly, and the end of the barrel had no aperture but the howling mouths of 1,000 stolen saints. At the base of the gun were assemblies of delicate glass and stacked tubes full of focusing crystals, while at the very rear was a cascable carved of blue-veined rock through which moved skeins of light. In place of a firing station was an obelisk of dark stone, machinery, and flesh. 8 thick pipes erupted from the obelisk's flanks and plunged down through a hole at the center of the turntable, thence into a shaft bored through the chamber's floor. Those pipes ran down and spread away in a great ring that ran beneath the planet's surface. The Ring of Bucharest, Tenebris had named it. Dark pacts had been made to ensure its completion. They went to the control station. The Mechanicum adepts bowed to Kargathar and gave due respect to Yang as the finder of the ring. Prevalent on the controls were rods of Noctilith. In the center of the obelisk, girt by weeping saws, was a cavity no bigger than a coin. The Dark Apostle pointed to it.
"See here, the place for the key that will unleash all hell upon the Corpse Emperor's dogs," said Kargathar. "The key you found."
Yang moaned in holy ecstasy. She was shaking again, sending her chains dancing, but not this time from fear.
"An impressive sight, yes?"
said a voice at Kargathar's side. He heard her wet sniffing.
"You have grown mightier, Dark Apostle. Very impressive. I wondered what you were doing with yourself these last days while I labored here."
Kargathar swung about, and he had the urge to snatch out his Crozius and strike Tenebris down there and then. But he refrained.
"Magus,"
he said. Tenebris had his hood down, showing a smooth scalp the color of a shark's belly and a nose receding to nothing. Needle teeth glinted in his infuriating smile.
"You wished to see, yes? I know. Did not want to come a-creeping to me, but show your pride instead and come unbidden. Fairly done, Apostle. I acknowledge the favor you are held in."
He crooked his neck in a mocking bow.
"Now we have business to be about, a communion with our war leaders."
He looked up at the cannon.
"The time approaches for us to show our power."
He leered at Tharador Yang.
"Your acolyte is proving herself most useful. By our command, she will attend also."
He turned his back and walked away from the gun.
"Come now, great things are afoot."
"Stay behind me," Kargathar said to Yang.
"You must court great people to become great, but do not allow yourself to be drawn into his net. There is peril here for you."
Once they were in the sorcerer's lair, Tenebris went to his font.
"Will you join me, Apostle?"
The invitation was lightly given, yet it did not bear refusing. Kargathar stepped up beside the robed figure and directed his gaze down into the oily liquid.
"And what about your charming disciple?"
"She is not ready to partake of the warp conclave," said Kargathar. "She will remain here and watch only." The oil moved sluggishly in the font. Lights stirred in the depths.
"I insist," Tenebris began.
"You asked her attendance, not her participation," Kargathar interrupted. He lifted his gaze from the liquid and stared at Tenebris. Black light flared around his eye lenses. The sorcerer chuckled.
My, such new spleen you have, Apostle. Very well. You will observe, Tharador Yang."
He winked at the acolyte. Kargathar returned his attention to the font. The darkness called to him, rising up, forcing his vision into a tunnel.
"The rest of them await our pleasure,"
came Tenebris's velvety voice.
"Let us commune with them, yes?"
Suddenly, Kargathar felt as though he were lurching forward. Instinct moved him to grip the rim of the font. Yet his body was gone, an absence left behind as his consciousness plunged downwards. This was not the smooth journeying of his own sorcery, but something harder, more unforgiving. There was a sense of acceleration, of falling, the building need to breathe, to move, to blink, to do anything at all except fall. But fall was all he could do. Then all around Kargathar was calm. He hung in a void, a bodiless spirit unable to see or to move. Then Tenebris spoke.
"Here we meet in the bosom of darkness. Here we gather to snuff out the false light of terror. Friends, do you hear my voice?"
"I do," replied Kargathar.
I hear you,"
came the rasp of Torvan Locke's response, and Kargathar was glad to hear his war brother.
Confirmatory,
came the many-layered whine of High Magos Vec Zyrax, a voice of scrap-code whispers and snarls. Others spoke. Warpsmith Util, Warpsmith Cassipiniax, Commander of the Fleet, Voidmaster Jorg Claudrin, Grand Battery Master Fodov, until the darkness was thick with distant presences.
A fine gathering,
said Tenebrous, in the tone of a man reunited with beloved friends.
I come with grave news and good news. First, the good. The weapon is almost finished. The grave is that the enemy is coming. You have limited time to achieve your objectives. Warpsmith Locke, how fares your hunt?
It continues, replied Locke, with a poor grace that made Kargathar wish he could take his friend aside. Locke and Tenebrous had no love lost between them, and Locke was too blunt a man to hide it. We flushed out another pocket of corpse worshippers before dawn. They were better provisioned and supplied than I might have expected.
Warpsmiths, did you not tell me days ago that you were on the verge of breaking them?
Tenebrous's voice was indulgent, yet Kargathar heard the threat there all the same. Util spoke up.
It is a big city, with a continent's worth of surface structures and catacombs. The cultists Kargathar delivered to us are not worth a damn in a war like this. The best indication they give us of the foe's presence is when they show up dead. You said, Tenebrous, that you would deliver this world to us. Where are Kargathar's warriors? Where are the demons we were promised? Without aid from the... I have better than demons to give you, if you would but wait,
Tenebrous interrupted. He didn't raise his voice, but his intervention cut the veteran Iron Warrior dead. This cannot continue. The Imperials are heavily dug into the spaceport, said Kargathar. Your warriors of iron take down their remaining strongholds slowly. You do not live up to your reputation. The War Master told us to take this world, and what do we have? Dead warriors and ruins.
The port of Ascension Stair is the key, yet it is well shielded, said Cassipiniax uneasily. They resist on the ground. The Emperor's dogs are persistent. We must take them from above.
While the defense laser batteries remain operational, you shall have no orbital support, said Claudrin. I am tempted to bomb this place to ruin and depart. We shall not take it now. The enemy will move on us. Best we leave them nothing but ash.
You shall do no such thing, said Tenebrous. There are plans in play that must conclude. Lucaris's gift will provide. You put too much faith in the mystical and none in the physical. All the favor of the gods will do nothing if we are outplayed in war, said Util. Give us more possessed at least, said Cassipiniax. They have proven most useful in scouring the catacombs. I have volunteers who wish to host the Neverborn.
The possessed are the most blessed of all our brethren. It is not an easy thing to fashion more of them, said Kargathar. That is another thing, said Locke, sounding wary. Warbrother, a pack of your God's Touch vanished from our Voxnet yesterday. I sent a force to look for them, and they had been slain. They were dealt with quickly, and I found none of the foes dead.
It would have been the sisters, said Util.
They were slain using a bolt caliber, the same as our own, said Locke.
Imperial Space Marines, Fodov exclaimed.
How? Said Claudrin. I have had no notice of enemy ships entering the system. The remnants of their fleets are gone. We are in control. Nothing has emerged from the Mandeville points. They could not break in system without my knowing.
Yet they did, mused Tenebrous. Without my detection or Lord Zyrax's either. Curious.
Kargathar knew, but kept his silence for the moment.
Additional advisory, said Zyrax. No ships detected. Affirmative. Nothing detected. Negative.
No warp signatures? Asked Cassipiniax.
Negative.
It means nothing. The interference from Tenebrous's sorcery and the number of ships coming and going earlier in this war could mask their arrival, said Claudrin. Even were the warp here placid, it would be easy to miss the arrival of a small task force. Is that what we are dealing with? Said Fodov.
Possibility, said Zyrax. No ship arrived detected, but possible warp disturbance logged here on Cathalamor.
Speak, said Util.
At a time approximately 18 hours and 12 minutes prior to present, Parasite primary empiric augers detected 4 nanosecond energy spikes from deep void, followed by resonance return located within Impresentia.
There was a pause as the others digested this information. What, in your estimation, would you say these anomalous pulsars warned of? Asked Tenebris, his voice a chill zephyr.
Hypothetical. Possible teleportation signatures or empiric excitation from demonic manifestation.
Teleport signatures? There's not an Imperial warship within 1,000,000 miles of Cathalamor, or your damned demon ship would have detected it, correct? Said Claudrin.
Confirmatory. Parasite is infallible. I would stake my life upon it.
No need for such dramatic declarations, I am sure, said Tenebris equably. Magos, is it possible that what your ship detected was just some unusual anomaly, perhaps an omen or foreecho of our work?
Assessment. Unlikely. Further evidence of slain demon hosts suggests possibility of hostile unknown entrance into theater highly probable. Resonant pulse detection was close by last known location of missing word-bearer's possessed hunting pack. What? Why in the name of the dark gods did you not tell us this straight away? Barked Util. The information had to be fully analyzed to ensure there were no errors, and then distributed via the optimal channel. Causal. My request to Lord Tenebris for this communion. Send me the coordinates, and I will move on them at once, said Util. Our forces are weakened after these months of fighting. A demi-company of loyalist scum could tip the balance in their favor. What if there are more? Agreed. We need to discover the nature of this threat, said Cassipiniax. Calm yourselves, said Tenebris, and now there was none of the good humor in his tone. He sounded stern, a scholar rebuking lazy students. Warpsmith Util, you may send a force to investigate, but you will not allow this effort to delay your assault on the Void Port. Is that understood? If the Magus suggests, said Util sourly. I'm Magos Cyrax. You will transmit all relevant data to the Warpsmiths, but once that is done, you will turn all your efforts to accelerating the completion of the cannon. Confirmatory with expression of reiterated fealty. The corpse worshippers grow bold indeed to strike at us so, said Fodov. Leave them to my guns. Keep those knights off my batteries, Locke, and those shields will come down. Then the defense lasers and Claudrin will be free to act. The Space Marines must be dealt with, said Util. Kargathar deemed now the time to speak up, and as he did, he gloated a little that he knew something that Tenebris did not. They were not Space Marines, said Kargathar. The Adeptus Custodes have arrived here. In what number, I know not. Adeptus Custodes? Here? Why? Said Cassipiniax. I can only infer they have learned something of what we intend to do, said Kargathar. It is the only explanation. There was uproar in the dark as the assembled leaders all began talking at once. Their minds buffeted at Kargathar's own, and beyond them he felt malignant beings turn their attention upon the group. Their efforts will ultimately come to naught, said Tenebris lightly. Better to see this as a sign of what is to come, for if the Adeptus Custodes are here, their faithless master is not far behind. Gilliman is coming, and he will be here soon. That is our focus, not the thin-blooded mortals grubbing about in the ruins, or the so-called guardians of the throne. Locke, please continue to harry the foe, yes? Keep them away from the Macro Cathedrum. If you were to allow me to move on the knights, Locke began. Util and Cassipiniax are tasked with taking the port, said Tenebris. It is the War Master's will. Matters move swiftly now. The stream gathers pace and becomes a raging river. I dislike that the enemy lingers here. Weak they are, yet they pose a risk even so. I know that the War Master would feel as I do, that the planet is not yet ours. He would be. Kargathar heard the menacing smile in the pause. Disappointed, Tenebrous finished. Do not make me apportion blame. He loaded his word with threat.
We will continue to make every effort, said Util,
and now he did sound rattled.